I said to you off camera before we began here that we need to start looking at how-to guides for people, because people are waking up and smelling that something's really not right around here.
And that's good. That's
a good thing. But they don't
means
know
they're breaking the trance.
They're
okay?
breaking the trance.
They're breaking the paradigm trance. And whether they know it or not, it's those feelings inside that are absolutely designed now to take them to the next level.
The question is, now that we know that something's wrong and we're waking up and we've broken the trance, where the heck do we go? And you have incredible information on many levels. A lot of it is very elegant and to the point, and it's why didn't I think of that? And others is much more esoteric. There's knowledge of a lot going on around this planet that's going to be revealed. So let's start wherever you'd like to start with the story in terms of how we begin preparing ourselves, say, for the next 3 years. What's going to be revealed, how we prepare ourselves, and what's in our own best interest in terms of how we treat ourselves.
I think most important, and this is what the Pleiadians have taught me over the years, and the Pleiadians are, of course, the entities or energies that I channel, that we have to really make peace with ourselves, our physical form, and the consciousness that occupies that physical form. So bottom line, they always say, number one, in order to go forward, you have to love yourself. And that's not easy to do.
It's the hardest thing on this
Yes.
planet.
And yet the first basic thing is they say to get the car out of the garage, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting in the garage and you're driving the car going nowhere. So basically the exercise they have always suggested is you look in the mirror, you know, and you have a real heart-to-heart with yourself, eye-to-eye in the mirror, and you start telling yourself, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then you start to see what comes up. And a lot of times people will want to break eye contact with the mirror, or they'll look down, and so that's the process of what veils and blocks do we have that prevent us from saying I love you to ourselves.
I bet a lot of them break into tears.
Of course, that's because, again, as I was saying last night in my talk, that once the tears start coming up, they're a form of recognition, and those tears are symptomatic of all the barriers that we've put there that help us forget, or that we choose to forget. And once we start then having the tears, we melt those barriers, we melt those memories, and we start to see that that's our first job, to love ourselves, not to look for love outside of ourselves, to love ourselves, and then to be love-generating machines, beings, energies, bio body suits, whatever. And that's where it begins. And then from there, there's, it starts opening. After that, you make an agreement to trust yourself, you make an agreement that your body is sacred, and that your body can do anything, and that we're really programming ourselves all the time. And if we're not programming ourselves, then the media and society is doing it for us.
Let's talk about that. You don't have health insurance. I heard that in one of your
Never
lectures.
had it.
You've never had it?
Don't
you
go
don't
to the
believe
doctors.
in it? You don't go to the hospital?
No, I don't.
Except when you had to help your mama go over.
Yes, and that was really because she was in pain.
That's right.
And
yeah.
it was her belief, sort of.
Yeah.
And I said, well, even though for years I said, Mom, we're not going to do doctors. We can either wait in line and pay a lot of money, or we can do treatments. And once I turned around to treatments, she loved treatments.
Yeah.
And treatments are really going to someone and having them facilitate your energy, cleaning your body, having body work, whether it's chiropractic, massage, or really getting down to what's very, very, very important in these times is cleaning internally. Through, some people want to do fasting, but colon cleanses, liver cleanse, colonics, all these things remove all the sludge and gunk that we're holding on to. So that really, in my opinion, is another thing that's real important to help facilitate energy.
How, for yourself, you're going unprotected, no HMOs on your side.
No.
So what do you do for yourself, just as an example to inspire people?
Well,
to take care of yourself.
I have good thoughts, number one, and I accept responsibility for everything I create, even though sometimes that's really, really hard. And I would start the day with a glass of water, and then after that I would have a glass of Soleil, which is a combination of Himalayan sea salts and water, and it's sort of a saline solution with high concentration of minerals, and so that would alkaline my body. And then next, after a little while, would come a green drink, some sort of, invigorating, powdered, usually green drink. And then after that, I might have fruit, and then I would eat pretty much in moderation, but not, really strict. And I always bless my food, meaning that I might put my hands together and do a yum over it, But what that's really doing is I'm thanking everything that's coming into my body, and I'm asking everything I add to my body to meet my vibration or to take me higher. So there's a consciousness with eating that I think most people don't have. I do eat relatively healthy. I'm a gardener. I grow herbs. I grow some of my veggies. You know, I'm a good cook. I think it's really, really important to prepare your own food and to love preparing your food because we're putting energy into it, and then to enjoy what we're eating and to make it a sort of a feast and a festive thing even. And I eat alone lots of times. And when my mom came to live with me, she was amazed that I would like always put like a cloth napkin out, you know, which I think is just important. You know,
yes,
I worked in restaurants
like
for years.
Sister.
Yeah,
this is how I
and
feel.
then I always light a candle,
Yeah.
and I make it pretty. And she was always amazed that I would eat like this by myself. You know, and I'd say, "Well, Mom, why should I wait to go out to be treated like this? This is part of the ritual of living." It's like, you know, my house is like that too. It's like a ritual of living. I keep it in order. I make beauty. Beauty opens our senses, and it makes us more psychic. And I was saying to someone recently that that's the true meaning of art. To make beauty, and then to have that beauty really stimulate our senses so that we then move beyond the reality we're in and we can sense our connectedness to other realities, because reality is multidimensional.
Indeed, and now this whole element of beauty, you also, your P friends, the Pleiadians, have also talked about the essential nature of beauty in our lives. Can you comment on some, just kind of add some layers to that of what you've also been, what also has come through you on the subject of beauty?
Let me think about
Whether
that.
it's geometry, symmetry, even, you know, one thing I am curious about is the notion of the golden ratio, because that comes from our heartbeat all the way out to everything, the symmetry and
well,
beauty.
that would be the golden mean. The golden
Yes.
ratio would be sort of a real built-in living library formula that establishes a ratio and a basis from which, you know, reality can be built. One of the things, the interesting things the Pleiadians said about old building that was made with beauty and built with the golden mean was that they didn't just factor in, you know, this ratio. They also factored in the effect of sunlight on buildings, okay? And that how, when buildings were constructed, say such as the Acropolis or something like that, that how sunlight would, where it would touch it and how it would be in relationship to the sun would also create a sustainability. And that if we built an
a
orientation...
sustainability for the
meaning the product would last
inhabitants, or-
longer.
Oh, the product
The
would
product itself, so that whatever you were building with,
Right.
when if you used wood or stone or whatever, particularly stone, that by the effect of sunlight on that stone, using the golden mean ratio to start with, it would then last much, much longer in time, because all of these, you know, elements of beauty and the multiverse would be factored in. So today, well, we're like blind mice building stuff, and it's all money, and it's all just thrown up, and
Living
there's
in
no
modules.
aesthetics.
No.
And on some level, people don't demand it because I think we're being entertained to death.
Yes.
There's so much to choose from, and none of it has much quality or substance to it. And that's symptomatic, I think, of people having lost meaning. Our society does not honor people who want to contradict what's going on, rightly so, because the media controls everything just about.
It's been hijacked completely.
Yes, completely, and none of it's really the truth. So there's this sort of desperation in people's souls, and they don't know what to do, and they've given up. And they've lost their own vavoom, you know, to be individuals. But that's turning, that's changing, because I think people reached the bottom of emptiness now.
Yeah.
You know, especially
Yeah.
this last year, it's like, you know, how much more trivial could it get? And so there is a big turnaround happening, and that, but no one can expect anyone to do it for them. One of the things the Pleiadians taught me is that no one's going to save you. Nobody's going to come through the dimensions or walk through the doorway, or the government's not going to fix it for us.
You mean they're not landing on the White House lawn?
They're not
for
saving
us?
anybody. We have to raise our consciousness, and we have to get up and do it ourselves. The Pleiadians have often said that, you know, we're very lazy. And they also have said that we're highly unpredictable too, and that's what they love about us. That no telling when the herd's going to turn, because we can just suddenly respond to something, you know, very intuitively. So what people have to do is they have to accept responsibility. Our thoughts, our feelings, and, you know, our imagination. This is how reality is created, and we're all doing it all the time. And the energies of these times are sort of unplugging us from the old paradigm. And whether we choose to unplug ourselves, or whether society starts having greater and greater difficulties on the economic level, that certainly will unplug people from the paradigm on one level, because they will have to become more autonomous, more clever, you know, more innovative in how they deal with the world and how they reuse their resources and recycle and become, like clever, as I said,
Go back to their own source.
Yeah, I mean,
their
I
own
grew up in a
creativity.
very clever family. Everything was used, we were innovative, and everything had a purpose. And I grew up in the 50s, and so we've kind of lost that, especially as we lose our elders. They're leaving, our parents and grandparents, and they're taking great wisdom with them, real practical wisdom.
Well, it's our generation now.
Right.
We are the elders.
Right, and we're those of us born in the 40s and 50s were Pluto and Leo, and so we really like to play. We really are like big players, and our parents were more, and grandparents had to be more practical. The energy of today is bringing us back to practicality. I think that's the name of the game in the next few years, is that everything has to simplify, become more practical, and now those things will take people into the higher mind.
And one of the things you were talking about last night, in fact, I think at this point in the lecture, it was actually you were channeling at that time. They were talking about all of the elements, and you mentioned one in your own personal life, and that is the reconnection with the earth, the reconnection with the sunlight as grounding, not only grounding, but also allowing us to begin going back into a state of wholeness and opening our abilities, right?
Right. I mean, I've always been someone who enjoys the sun. And I've never said, I'm going to, ruin my skin or get skin cancer or anything like that. That's a belief. Those are beliefs.
Yes.
And if you believe those beliefs, then you end up spending a heck of a lot of money in the system that is looking for you to spend a lot of money that they can't fix you, but they want your money. So there's been a big campaign, in my opinion, to turn people against the sun.
Yes.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
I was hoping you'd talk about that.
And yet it's our source of light, it's our source of health, it's also our source of energy and information. Because it's not just warming us and allowing food to grow and the whole earth to blossom, it's also transmissions of information. And I think that's what the ancients knew. And there's stories, in history that talk about people who, when they wanted to have covert activities, they would always do it at night. And they wouldn't do it in the light of day because the sun would then know, and then the sun would transmit that information. And so we came up with that expression, doing things in the dark and keeping it secret. And so there's a lot of truth in sort of just, casual expressions and casual things that we know. And it's the time to bring all that into focus and realize these things are really, really important.
Yeah.
And so I think a way to health is to spend, a number, 20 minutes, couple of hours in the sun every day, glancing at the sun, acknowledging the sun, realizing that those rays not only provide vitamin D and sustain our body and blood and bones, but they're giving us information, and that information travels on light rays. And it's so important, and it's a two-way thing. We can communicate with the sun and just express our feelings or whatever, but it's not like worshiping God or anything like that. I think that my concepts of creator and source and all that, they're so large that I can't define it into a God, so to speak, and especially a male God.
Right.
Because how can, there's always the female component, and that's really another thing that's vastly missing from our planet, is that women are awakening. And unfortunately, so many women think they have to awaken into this feminism that turns them into men. And they lose their beauty, and they lose the whole idea of producing beauty and embodying life and protecting life, when I think part of a woman's role is to really take on that goddess energy and to embody it and to value life and to use the intuition.
Right.
And to really make a stance in society about establishing beauty and fairness, and that all life is honored. And that's what's coming back,
It is coming back, and also with great resistance. Here you have ever more expanding technology, very male-oriented in its expression and also in its design. And yet it affects all of us because now we're all becoming dependent on these technologies.
Exactly, and
now we're cut away from the sun even more.
Right.
How do you see that technological interface as the feminine really needs to show itself?
For myself, I stopped watching TV in the early 70s. It was 35 years ago. And it was a choice. It was a choice because I felt back then even that television was doing something to my mind. And that's why I stopped. I said, I'm not going to waste my time,
Good for you.
watching these things. So I do very minimal technology. I don't use my dishwasher. I don't use a microwave, even though they came with the house. They just sit there unused, really low tech. I use the computer for, very few things. I have to do some of my work on it. I do a newsletter when I write books and setting up events and something through email. But it's not something I look to jump into every day, because to me, I can't wait to go outside.
Yeah.
I live in a beautiful place. I purposely picked a place where I had land, enough to manage, and enough to enjoy and garden and have campfires in my backyard and sweat lodges and parties on my deck. And that's how I socialize. I really take people and myself out in nature. So it really comes down to a choice.
It does. Nonetheless, if you look at the really large scale, you're talking about children in particular being totally indoctrinated into the use of technology. And I was noticing even you go to a movie now in a theater, and you'll have, unlike even a few months ago, certainly a year ago, you got your ad to, join up with Uncle Sam. First of all, is your recruitment ad, followed by a, let's buy this really violent, nasty video game for Christmas or for the holiday season, Hanukkah, for your children. It's followed up with the very thing that's going to program them.
Well, these are all programmings, and the important thing about any visual art, okay, anything that we start choosing to, turn on and watch for entertainment, our brain waves change, and they immediately drop from, a conscious state into a very unconscious state. And people do that because they don't know how to relax anymore, and no one's talking about anything meaningful, so they don't know how to discourse or just have fun without, in deep inebriation or something like that. So it really comes down to people really getting consciously aware, making a choice. The pictures that are put before us are like living dreams. And they're forms of program, and so those pictures go in our brains, and then we think that's reality. And especially when it's children, the nervous system of a child is not mature enough to handle the rapidity of the data that is coming through. And they think that the speed up of games and violence and how fast everything goes and how little it is, even though it's entertaining, what's happening is that it's shutting down the perception, so that when you see people looking at some little device and the picture's this big. I have a bunch of nephews, and when they were really little, I'd walk into the living room, instead of them being yelling and screaming like sometimes they would be and having a great old time, which would drive people crazy, but they were playing, it'd be quiet, totally quiet, and I'd look around and I'd say, what are you guys doing? And they're all in a trance with a little thing this big. I guess they're called Game Boys. I never had kids, so I don't know. And they're pushing these little buttons, looking at these little pictures, and they're totally in a trance.
They're in trance, totally.
Totally in a trance, because their brainwaves shift. And they really have to shift to go down, to force your perceptions, which are out here, to go down to this little thing and stay there for hours and push these little things. What it's really doing is that they can't see anything anymore. Then they come out, and then they're hyperactive, because too much data has come in too fast, and their nervous systems are not developed to handle that. Until children reach, there's these cycles, every 7 years, it's the Saturn cycle. So until children are 7, they really need no media at all. None, absolutely none,
Play with the fairies in the trees.
Whatsoever.
Yeah.
They need to be shown that nature is safe, that you don't have to worry about spiders and ticks and all these things. They've been around forever. But when people set up a worry, and they say, well, we could get this, and they could fall off the bike, so they need a helmet, and we have to put armor on them, and then the ticks could come.
and antibacterial
and
wipes.
all this stuff and everything. This, again, is people creating their own reality. They say, well, this reality exists. I think I'll put energy behind it, and I'll protect my kid. And then you attract the very situations that you want to repel, because you're energizing them emotionally with fear. So you can attract by excitement and conscious intention, or you can attract things by unconscious, being programmed, and then having the high emotionality of fear or worry, which then closes the body down, weakens the immune system, and then you end up in this cycle of self-perpetuating, going nowhere.
Going nowhere, and now you have to enter into relationships with other human beings who have been equally damaged. And what's happening to our what have our relationships devolved to, in your opinion, and what do you see us evolving back into or beyond?
Well, if you think about the model I shared about the acceleration of energy, that in these years from 1987 till 2012, everything goes faster and faster and faster. Phase 1, goes tenfold each year, and then that's 87 to 96, 90 I get these years mixed up, 97, then to 2006, 100-fold. And then from 2007 to 2012, according to the Pleiadians and the way they describe this, everything speeds
We're
up
on the express
100,000-fold.
train.
Yeah,
Oh my
it
God,
just
100,000-fold.
100,000-fold, pedal to the metal, it goes. So what happens is that everyone wants to cram everything all into once. So when it comes to relationships, on a real spiritual, karmic timeline level, we're meeting all the people faster, quicker, and we have to do all this stuff with them. So people are being bombarded with all these meaningful relationships that are coming through time, and they may not consciously remember where they knew someone from, but there's a familiarity, and there's this sense of, I've got to complete this, I've got to do this, and this is what the internet's facilitating with, I guess, sites like MySpace and Facebook, which I've never been on any of these, but I hear about them. But what's happening is that people are putting all this data out about themselves, and they're trivializing everything because they want to connect and they don't know how to connect anymore. And so they've been taught by generation that this computer is going to connect them, but a computer can't replace meaningful face-to-face relationships where you're looking in someone's eyes, or you're feeling their energy field, where you can respond to implication and tone and body language. And so of course it's going to be empty. And as people go further into relating to each other based only on computers, then we're really destroying society. We're destroying the whole purpose of coming onto Earth, which is basically, I feel, to be in relationship.
And yet, hopefully, as a progression from there, you see that technology may start taking a dive here in the next few years, and that's
absolutely
going to change our potential.
Absolutely. I do study astrology as sort of a reality check, and I mentioned last night that the Pleiadians suggested I study astrology when after I first started channeling, and also they said to get Rolfed, get my body lined up. Yeah, I had a Rolf's work, and to use a crystal. So I did study astrology, and I have for 20 years now, and I just use it as a tool because sometimes the Pleiadians would say things, and I would think, oh, I don't know, this sounds so far-fetched, But as I started studying astrology, I could see where the cosmic weather was going, and I could see where these cycles were leading us by studying history when these things had happened before, and then based on my intuition and what people were showing me now. So we are going to turn all this around, because if we don't, and let me say this, not everyone will turn this around. There will be those who will proceed into this technological future. And it's not going to be pretty, because they'll end up destroying the body. The body can't handle the energy.
Can you talk about that, even the astrological indications, the basis for this that you've seen and been shown?
Well, the planet Uranus is in Pisces right now, and it always brings innovation. Last night I mentioned that Uranus and Pluto were conjunct in the 60s in the sign of Virgo, and that brought this great revolution out, which was played out in all kinds of ways. Yes. But basically we had a generational break, very quickly. And of course there was lots of other elements involved in attempting to control the astrological weather, or steer the masses into a container rather than let the masses organically respond to this energy. But it was a breakaway energy. It was a definite revolution. Mm-hmm. Well, we're in a much bigger phase of revolution now. The cycles are much larger. Because everything's faster and faster, it means it's not going to take a revolutionary cycle to unfold over 20 years after a stimulation point. It can unfold in weeks and days. We're right sitting at that cusp now. And so big changes are coming.
How does this affect technology, as you were mentioning?
I think that the point that got stimulated in the 60s is going to be re-stimulated in 2010. Mm-hmm. So that means that, all of us that were around in the 60s...
Protesting.
Protesting and expanding our minds and breaking open the head and all this stuff, and really, exploring what we were. And now it's going to re-stimulate all of us, because it makes an aspect that says, okay, now you have to really take and do something with that. And so worldwide revolution is coming. There's no doubt about it.
You see that happening in the U.S., political,
I see
everything.
it all over the world. I see it all over the world. I see political collapse eventually all over the world. And as the Pleiadians would say, it's all by agreement. It will create chaos, there's no doubt about it. But in order to build something new, and for something new to come out, something has to crumble. And sometimes it's literal crumbling, and sometimes it's simply things just stop working. And you can see we're in this, everything's not working anymore. And why isn't it working? Because people are so corrupt.
Okay.
They're so corrupt. Everything, you know.
True.
I mean, and it's a choice that we all have to face. We all get this. It's like somebody will say to you, well, if you do this, you know, then you can get this. And then you say, well, okay, you know, and then, you know, it looks like a way to get ahead. And then eventually they say, well, you know, I helped you do this, this, and this, so now I want this favor back. And you say, I don't want to do this. And then they go, oh, okay, you know, and then you get set up. I mean, I haven't, but, you know, I can see how it works. And then people set people up for, you know, blackmail, corruption, and it gets really, really,
which is common
really nasty.
in Congress.
It's so common all over the world that it's very, very sad.
Yes.
So then we have this level of corruption worldwide that's basically caught up in blackmail schemes, and those blackmail schemes always go back to two issues: money and sex, and the misuse of money and the misuse of sex. They're always, you know, first, second chakra issues. How can I survive? What am I going to do with my sexuality? So that's something that really has to change, is that people valuing their sexuality.
Right. And so the rise of porn is not a good thing for the human psyche, you're saying?
No, it's horrible,
Yeah.
because what happens is this rise of porn is a replacement for real relationships. And I read something very interesting, that along with the rise of porn, in men anyways, there's also an equal rise of sexual dysfunction. I think they
Yes.
call it erectile dysfunction.
Yes.
So the more men are looking for stimulation that's not real outside themselves, the less they are able to have fulfilling relationships.
But this works
then
for
they-
the drug companies.
Well, the drug companies, yes, $35 billion.
Oh, yeah.
$35 billion is the recent figure, and they expect it to go to $50 billion by 2010. Now, what this is saying on a real symbolic level is that something's happening with people, and they don't know what it is. So they go to a doctor, and the doctor is just, you know, he's just a factory worker. That's all he is. I mean, no offense, but we're all just factory workers. You come out of college, you come out of school, I don't care how many degrees you have and how much you paid for it. We're just a factory worker fulfilling someone else's agenda to make money and to keep people locked into something, into services that have no heart. So these people come in, the doctors aren't psychic, they're not trained to be psychic, they don't have time, they don't care, they don't say, what's really going on? They don't want to look in the soul. So then it's all these drugs, and people get on drugs, and then they don't know what's going on, and they vacate their body, and then this is where we get into entity possession. Drugs can lead to entity possession, and pornography leads to entity possession. Because what happens when you lower your vibration and your values sexually, okay, then you and then you have sex based on these sort of activities, okay, what I call funky sex, you know, without love and without real significance, you know, and it goes way down from there.
Right.
You open yourself wide to other entities to come in that want human bodies to, you know, engage in these perverse activities, and they're harmful and they're demeaning. And the important thing that people must really understand is that sex is psychic energy. It's powerful psychic energy used at a very high level. Two people can generate so much sexual energy and the psychic energy that they can remote view during sex. They can go heal the world and change things. This is sort of a lost art, and we sort of hide it under tantra and all these things and think it has to be all these exercises and magical performing and everything. It really has to do more with two people's intention
It's more
of
essential.
trust
Yeah.
and heart and eye contact, because so much gets shared through the eyes. So on some level, pornography is coming up because it has to be cleansed. It's an old, ancient issue, the debasement of the human body, using children, animals, controlling people in this way. This is so old. And so as we're changing the paradigm, everything that's not working, that's really dark and nasty, it's got to come up to be identified. This whole idea of like, well, you know, we're going to get ascended, and, you know, we're going to lift our consciousness and love and light, and we don't have to know about this stuff, because I've taught very difficult things over the years, and I've taken a lot of flack for it. And people years ago used to say, Barbara Marciniak, wow, she's getting really dark, and, you know, she's working with the devil and all this stuff. And I'd say, wow, are these people in denial that if you don't use light words and things of all beauty and upliftment, people are afraid? And yet if we don't go there and address it, it can never be healed. It's like, think about leprosy, you know, how horrible it was historically. And people didn't want to look, and they banned the lepers and everything. And it wasn't until, like, I think it was Father Damien on Molokai or something, that he made a home for the lepers and he looked at them and then people could address it and they could start healing it. So we have to look at what's not working, even if people think they're enjoying it, because
it's popping up all around anyway.
The entity possession is going to get worse and worse. And one of the reasons is this, that there are beings on the planet, human, I mean, they have a human body, I don't know how human they are, but they operate with a physical form. And they understand some of the oldest arts of the planet, which are like, I guess we would call magical arts. It's like a magical intelligence. And these arts can be used for good or ill. And they use them for ill. And when you perform acts of intention at times of power, then you can condition space. And anything that's done on the solstices, the equinoxes, the cross quarters, which are the halfway point between solstices and equinoxes, and the new moons and full moons, any kind of ceremonial activity that's done at that time can really condition the whole earth, especially if somebody really knows what they're doing and they want to dedicate a certain activity, such as 9/11, for example. Let's stage a 9/11, this mass ritual sacrifice of people, and let's broadcast it and tell everyone that it's this. And then what happens is, on some level, we think, oh my God, I knew right away. I mean, as soon as it happened, because of my intuition and my work, I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was a staged event, and I knew it was an attempt to sell fear, and more than that, what the Pleiadian said, it was an attempt by a global elite using media to get everybody's attention into one probable reality. And then that probable reality, then they would dedicate like a 9/11 or a Waco or an Oklahoma City or any of these events, anything, any of the wars, any of the skirmishes would be dedicated by some beings, some humans, to non-physical forces. And they would say, here, we're offering you this life form. And you'd say, well, why is that important? Well, one of the things I learned is that, beings from other dimensions are very attracted to us by natural. This is natural. We flow in and out. And they're attracted to our life force and our vibration. And this is why historically virgins would be offered for sacrifice. Young children, virgins, because they had very pure energy. And when a body would be sacrificed and blood offered, the entities would just come pouring in because it's like food for them. So we have to counteract that. And part of my work has been to teach people to honor those times when the energies between heaven and earth, cosmic and ourselves, flow, like they really flow like a Niagara Falls. And it's our job to give thanks and to pray and to have gratitude and to really condition what we want and set the season ahead by intention. And that's the way we have to counteract this. So it's all sort of playing with the same materials. It just comes down to intentionality.
And creating a new set of values, real values.
Yeah, and I think people learn about values by example, and certainly by role model. And when they see that someone has the courage to say the emperor has no clothes, then they may want to say it too. Well, we're going to be doing a lot of that, a lot. Astrologically, there's going to be a lot of hard things that we're going to have to integrate. People will, because we've placed our belief and trust in something, people, situations, institutions that don't honor that trust and yet pretend they do. So this becomes a shock to people because we are trusting beings. We are really pretty good at heart, most of us. And so we project, oh, I wouldn't do this, so nobody else would ever do this. And that's part of the credibility of these global elite, is they know that. They all study psychology, they understand behavioral modification, they understand spirits, they understand astrology, understand the whole scoop. They're occult practitioners, and they know the story of the planet, so they know the cycles, so they manipulate us. And the bigger question is we have to ask ourselves, if we create our own reality individually and as a mass, mass agreement, why did we create this?
Yes, that's the big question.
It's like not like, well, let's go after these people and can we hold new Nuremberg trials and can we get all indignant about what they're doing? Well, you can waste your time doing that, but what's the bigger picture here? Why have we, as a race of human beings, created this tyranny on our planet? And why is it that is so pervasive that people are afraid to even see it, or they don't even think they have power to overcome it? So those are some really pressing questions. really pressing issues.
And we're going to be looking at all of them in the next few years.
And you will see more people come out. You will see more people who know how to manage this energy. I've been doing my work officially for 20 years with the Pleiadians. So what I see from doing my work for the last 20 years is that people who are willing to learn and willing to change their beliefs and willing to face up to, wow, I really created this, and what can I do? What's the point of it? What lesson can I get? And how can I move on? These people are getting really strong. They're getting really smart. They're totally intuitive. They are not, most of the time, they can't be fleeced anymore. Where before they used to say, oh, is this person great? Or look at this. And they were so naive. And now they go, Barbara, look at this. And I just laugh because I've been very successful in being able to open up in those who wanted it, this freedom of thinking, this freedom of perception. And it's quiet. I don't collect names. There's no dues. There's no lists of anybody, but they're everywhere. They're all over the world.
So you feel hopeful?
I feel very hopeful, and I feel that there's difficult times. I don't want to, come off as this everything's going to be fine.
We can feel it.
It's going to be really, really difficult. However, there are so many brilliant people on the planet, and they're waking up every day, and the process is indeed going to be a magnificent process, because I can feel what's happened to me in my own life and how I've turned difficulty into victory and initiation, into opening, and into empowerment. That's really what it's all about. And as the Pleiadians would say, you're really here to enjoy the body, create an experience, love. They say that's what we all come for. We come for love. And we come to contribute, to the creativity of each of our perceptions and what we make. We add to the creativity of the multiverse. And we're really here to heal. This is what this time is about. We're healing ourselves, we're healing our ancestors. And by healing and eradicating this unnecessary fear, I feel personally that it qualifies us then to meet other beings. Is that until any initiation, you meet your fear. And you can't get to the other side, to those higher frequencies, until you move through your fear. And no one else can do it for it. Every person has to do it themselves. So moving through fear and deciding that we're courageous enough and that we are creators and we can process it and go forward, that's taking us to the higher levels. And this is definitely going to be a fabulous time to be alive.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.